Ryan, Trump right away came out and said, we're protecting IVF. That's a second point of this block that we want to get to, because when you're looking at Donald Trump specifically making gains with young voters, with people who consider themselves liberal, he has a 20-point bump from February of 2021. That can go out the door with other Republican candidates. Donald Trump, though, came out right away saying,
yeah. This I think is the key problem for the Republican coalition, because the one thing that kind of Trump and the anti-Trump Republican establishment agree on is that a lot of the kind of Republican cultural positions are terrible for them in general elections.
Yes.
And probably nothing more so than the IVF issue.
Abortion in general.
Right. I mean, which is it's within the sphere of abortion rights, but it's probably even worse for them.
Yes, significantly.
But so so today the Senate is going. Two Democrats in the Senate, Tammy Duckworth, somebody else, and Patty Murray, are going to try to force a vote on the Senate floor that tries to put Republicans on record that will say, you could put this element up here, that will say IVF is protected on a federal level. Right. This flows out of the kind of shocking to the public Alabama Supreme Court decision that declared that embryos that have been produced through the IVF process are children, and through the entire kind of Alabama IVF system into complete chaos. All of the people who've been hoping and praying that they're finally going to have a chance to raise children, and spending like enormous amounts of money, like
tons of money,
a lot of people do this on credit, and otherwise making extraordinary sacrifices because they want to build a nuclear family, are now all of a sudden told that it's not happening. Now Alabama is trying to give some type of immunity, legal shield to doctors, but
and other states
walk us through and actually tell us a little bit about how big a part of the kind of pro-life movement is this IVF faction that wants to go all the way to the wall for this.
So in pro-life circles, you basically never hear this talked about. It's not a top-of-mind issue, especially after Dobbs. It's a lot of conversations just about states and abortion in particular. Although, if you believe, and Crystal and I talked about this and actually kind of debated it a little bit last week, if you believe that conception is the moment of that life begins, obviously most people in pro-life circles, push comes to shove, end up on that side of myself included, end up on side of that. But there are other states, I think Louisiana is one of the examples, that have protections for embryos that have not upended the entire IVF system in this way that, I mean, the politics of it are bad, and we'll get to this in a bit, but the morality of it is awful. I mean, NPR profiled a woman who is now like, my embryos are at this clinic, but the clinic will not give me my embryos, and the clinic can't do anything with my fertilized embryos. It's just heart-wrenching. People's hopes and dreams and livelihoods are on the line because of a ping-ponging sort of legal question. It's awful.
Because you end up losing the moral thread there, it feels like. If the purpose is life
and family,
just leaving an embryo in a freezer indefinitely doesn't seem to even be kind of in service of their own agenda.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And so Tammy Duckworth picked up on the politics of this. Donald Trump right away said protecting it. But Tammy Duckworth and Democrats immediately, there's a lot of headlines that always say Republicans pounce whenever there's a politically convenient issue for them. Well, Democrats definitely pounced this time. Let's listen to Senator Duckworth, whose children, by the way, were born via IVF.
1 in 4 married women have difficulty getting pregnant or carrying a pregnancy to term. 1 in 4. That doesn't even include single individuals and other families also trying to conceive. So to my Republican colleagues, please think about how many that 1 in 4 represents in your state. Women willing to go through expensive, painful treatments just for a chance to experience the most banal moments of parenthood. Just to have a newborn to swaddle, a toddler whose shoes need to be tied. And if you believe that they should have the right to be called mom without also being called a criminal, then all you have to do to prove it is help us pass this should be obvious legislation. Because in this nightmarish moment, it's nowhere near enough to send out a vaguely worded tweet suggesting that you care about women's rights, despite a voting record to the absolute contrary. Instead, if you truly care about the sanctity of families, if you're genuinely, actually, honestly interested in protecting IVF, then you need to show it by not blocking this bill on the floor tomorrow. It's that simple.
And she said that because we can put this next element up on the screen. This is from Newsweek. It's a headline that says, Republicans call Alabama IVF ruling scary. And if you're watching this, you see the picture of Matt Gaetz up on the screen because Matt Gaetz is one of the Republicans who came out right away and said, nope, Republicans should be protecting IVF. He said there was something, quote, totally wrong about the situation. You also had Byron Donalds, another Freedom Caucus guy, come out in that direction, and then some establishment people like Chris Sununu. Even Tommy Tuberville, again, who was seen as like now a pro-life champion based on his stand that we covered a lot here last year on Pentagon and abortion sort of.
So even Tuberville is.
Even Tuberville.
And so if this gets to the floor, will this be a thing where Republicans just kind of cave and like it gets unanimous support?
I don't know, because Duckworth did something really clever. It's basically, she's basically saying it would establish a federal right to IVF and other fertility treatments that are at risk in the post-Roe era. That's what, according to The Hill, is on the line in the bill that she and Patty Murray put to the floor. So if it's a bill with really sweeping implications that Republicans don't necessarily want to sign on to at a federal level, then she might have a bunch of Republicans, and you heard that in her quote at the end of the statement there, she might have a bunch of Republicans in a real pickle, voting against a bill that they feel is.
What are the sweeping kind of protections? Like it would undermine Louisiana's.
Maybe, yeah,
doing?
Right. So like maybe and I'm not saying that that's the right interpretation of it, but you could see how like legally Republican interpretations of a federal right to IVF might, yeah, exactly, like go after certain state protections or whatever, or it might just be something that has implications for other abortion legislation, because if you're, or like birth control legislation, some really, like, I don't know.
Where they get even more tangled up.
Yeah.
Because then they're like, well, I would love to support this protection of IVF, but I'm worried it might protect birth control.
Exactly.
And then voters are like, well, wait a minute, you're seriously against birth control too?
Exactly.
And Speaker Mike Johnson's response to this, I think, was indicative of the problems that Republicans have, where he immediately came out and was like, this is bad what the Alabama Supreme Court did. And then people are immediately like, you sponsored a bill that would basically do this.
Yes.
And it feels like the
Yes.
Republican implicit response is, yeah, but I just did that for political purposes. Like, I don't actually intend that to become law. And then the public is like, well, we kind of heard you say that for like 50 years with Roe v. Wade. And we sort of were lulled into complacency.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you overturn Roe v. Wade. So this like, well, this is just cynicism that we're doing here. We wouldn't actually do this. It doesn't work after they overturned Roe.
Well, yeah, and again, you have Tammy Duckworth saying, if you're serious, you need to vote in favor of this bill. And so I think, again, yeah, that's what Democrats have learned is like the big political lesson post-Roe is to tell Republicans to put their money where their mouth is if they're going to come out in all of these things. So I was on Megyn Kelly's show this week, and among the sort of Republican politicians that we just discussed, Megyn's a huge supporter of IVF. And again, you know, I've debated with Crystal about this and others. I have a wildly unpopular position on this, but it's just sort of the logical consistency. If you believe that life begins at conception, this is where the problem for Republicans come into the picture.
Or
no, not at all. And that's what the clip actually gets to. So let's roll the conversation. Megyn gets into how unpopular she thinks this is going to be for Republicans, dangerous it is for Republicans, and then pushes me on one thing as well.
There is a huge difference between looking at a woman and saying, you do not have the right to kill your own child, and saying to her, you do not have the right to have your own child. That is just a completely different message politically, morally, religiously. Take your pick. And the latter's not going to fly. It's not going to fly with Republicans. It's not going to fly with the very group that Trump is trying to win over, as we discussed earlier, in particular, young, moderate women, right? That's who he needs to win. So he took the right position on this. Before we go, can you expand on what you're saying, Emily? Because it's been a long while. You know, my youngest child is now 10. So I haven't really been following the latest IVF developments, but what is the more, moral, humane way of doing it that you're referring to?
So targeted, yeah, like what you were saying about to minimize situations where people have 10 extra embryos that they have to make decisions on.
So like just put the number of eggs in the petri dish that you're willing to have. Like it's really the eggs that will control the number of children.
Right. And then figuring out what these clinics do with extra eggs too. I think that's a big legal question as well, because now we have people like the woman on the Daily caught in the lurch when a court decision comes down. So as this stuff sort of flip-flops or ping pongs through the legal system, you're gonna have people's lives sort of caught in the balance, and there should be some way that there's clarity so people aren't in those situations. So Ryan, Megan is picking up on an important point, which is similar to what Tammy Duckworth said, that you should have the right to have your own child. The problem with the way that I believe IVF should be done is that it's extremely expensive to do that. It is basically unfeasible for a lot of people. So I don't pretend that that's like an easy answer to the question, but I think Republicans are starting to realize post-Roe how bad the environment is for them, especially, Megan pointed out, young women. Probably another reason Tammy Duckworth and Patty Murray jumped on this right away, because Donald Trump is saying one thing about IVF, but down ballot candidates, that could get really tough for them.
Right, and because the problems are many. It's not just money; it's also time. You're getting older every single month.
Yes. Yeah.
And one reason that they do more than one is so that one takes.
Yes.
Sometimes 6 take.
Yeah.
And that could be fatal for a woman trying to carry that. The other problem comes with some of it is around genetics. Like there might be some genetic problems in the family that would create practically an unviable pregnancy, and so they can then create an embryo and genetically test and make sure, okay, it did not get that gene, and so therefore, we're not going to use this one, because that could. That just simply won't work. Now you can imagine where you can get into some ethical complications where then you start to do genetic engineering, but that's not what's going on. Unless the government wants to come in and say, like, no, this is like we're gonna dictate exactly how this goes down. And the point that she made about the painful nature of it, I think, is also important to underscore. For some reason, the medical community, when it comes to women, just can't figure out ways to do these procedures, without them being extraordinarily painful. Yeah. And so every time that a woman tries this and fails, they went through all of that pain, coupled with then this hope, coupled with then the heartbreak of it not working, followed up by, oh, you're back in for this like excruciatingly painful process, something that I imagine like most men would never be able to even like remotely handle. And then still told, oh, you can only do one, again, because the Republicans don't want you to do more than one. You get your hopes up again, your heart breaks again, you're back in the painful situation.
And so time, like you said, it's, right? You're back at square one, but you're a year further ahead, and
lost $100,000 to this, and now you finance that. Now what?
And the physical toll on your body, absolutely. Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that at all. And just it's what's happening to people, the uncertainty that people in Alabama are dealing with right now. Like, again, NPR profiled this woman whose fertilized embryos are in a clinic, and if you believe that that's life, that's human life.
Right. It feels like kidnapping.
Christopher Hitchens was actually.
I'm sure it feels a woman like her future children have been kidnapped.
Yeah. I would commend to everybody, there was a great Christopher Hitchens essay that he wrote in 2003 for Vanity Fair, just sort of talking about the implications of technology and the left's sort of idea about when life does begin, and the kind of difficult places that can take us to. These are questions that are worth thinking about, but it's in Alabama right now, there are a lot of people who are in dire straits and just desperately worried about these lives, from my perspective at least, and from their perspective. Again, the woman from NPR said those are it feels like a death in the family. It's awful, and there needs to be solutions to it. And the politics of this are absolutely brutal for Republicans.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.